Okay, so this is Lee, and Patty on Troy's Inkscape board had a request. What she wants to do is something a little bit different from what we usually do. She wants to take this picture of a dragon and create a file so that there's no gaps in between the colors. Um, and so that can be a problem when you're using Inkscape, because when you use the paint bucket to fill, it uses the black outlines. So I'm just going to show one way to do that. And first of all, I'm going to increase the size of this, and then I'm going to trace it. So I'm going to go to Path, Trace Bitmap. And I did my little preview, and it looks pretty light, so I'm going to increase the threshold a little until I feel like I'm getting a good trace. Okay. I got a little gap there. I don't want to deal with that, so let me try again. Just going to bump up the threshold a little more. I'm still getting that gap. Okay, so there we go. All right, so then what you would do is you would just fill the parts as you normally would, and I'm just going to do a couple of little parts so you can see how I did this. So I'm just going to first fill. I'm going to zoom in as far as I can and fill this body part, and I'm going to let that be pink, and then I'm going to fill in these parts, and I'm going to let those be sort of a tan color. Okay, so now normally if you were making a decal, you would take this back layer and you would make it solid by breaking it apart and putting it back together, and then you would have these be your black outlines of the drawing. But what she wants to do is have these as a wood inlay. I think she's doing a toy box for her granddaughter maybe, and so all of the pieces need to match like puzzle pieces, like exactly together. So one way you can do that is I can take these pieces right here and I can make them bigger. So I'm just going to select them all and union them together by doing Control-Shift+, which is the same as Path Union. Okay, so now they're all one piece that goes together. And then I'm going to outset them. So you can do Path Outset, or I like to use the keyboard shortcut, which is Control-Shift and the close parentheses. I'm sorry, just Control and the close parentheses. Oh shoot, I'm going to go back because my Inkscape does something weird sometimes. I'm going to go back to where they're not joined together, and I'm just going to select them all and do Control close parentheses to outset. And I'm just going to outset them until they are completely covering up any of that black outline. Okay, that looks dumb. That's not how we want it to look. I'm going to union them together now, Control-Shift+. Right now I'm going to go back to my dark pink layer. I'm going to duplicate it, Control-D. Okay, so now I have two copies of that pink layer. The duplicate is on top. And now what I want to do is I want to make sure that duplicate is selected, and I'll hold down Shift and select my light pink layer. And now I'm going to do Path Difference. Okay, now you can see it is chopped out. That layer, it has chopped any of the parts that overlap, so you have an exact fit there. It's an exact fit. If I was to take this black outline and move it out of the way, you can see there's no black outline showing through. Okay, well, I'll just do a couple more parts of it so you can see. And sometimes it can get fairly confusing because you've got so many parts here. When I first did this, I tried filling in these little tail spikes with the paint bucket, but they got a little, they weren't very crisp and nice looking. So instead what I did is I used the Bezier tool, and I just basically I'm going to overlap with the dark pink, and I'm just going to draw a little zigzag here. And you can go as slow as you need to. I'm just doing this quickly for demonstration purposes. Okay, I'm just following the zigzag of his tail, but I'm overlapping into the dark pink of his body, because I'm going to end up using that same difference technique to chop it down. Okay, so there's my outline. I'll go ahead and fill it a purple pink color, and if you want to, you can go back in here and select the nodes and clean it up a little. I've got snapping on. Let me turn snapping off. clean it up a little so it looks the way you want it to. Like that. Okay, so now we'll do the same thing. I'm going to go back to this peachy pink layer and duplicate it, Control D, and then I'll hold down Shift and select those purple things as well, and I'll just do Control Shift minus, which is the same as path difference. So you can see that that chopped those out the way we wanted it to. All right, so that's just sort of an example of how to do this, and you would go in and do pretty much the same steps with all of the rest of the parts. You can draw parts in if you want, or you can use the paint bucket and then do outset and then do path difference to chop them off where you need to. And then you can, sometimes you end up having to do path difference a couple of different times with different layers to get everything the way you want it to. I'll just show one more thing that you can do. Let's fill his face in. We'll make that this sort of beige color. And now, instead of using path outset to make it bigger, we're not going to do that. What I'm going to do is, you can just see if we move this out of the way, there's a gap in between his neck and his face. So what I can do here is I can just double click on this dark pink, and I can go in and select those topmost nodes and just use the arrow keys to stretch his neck up a little bit. I can move it out if I want to. And then, again, I can just duplicate his face, Control D to duplicate, and then hold down Shift and select that one, and do Control Shift minus or path difference. And you can see that it chopped it off right there and made a nice crisp connection between his neck and his face. Okay, so that's just a different combination of techniques that you can use to get rid of these outlines. You might do the same thing down here with his legs, because you're going to have a little border here between his body and his legs. So you might shift these parts down and then use whatever you fill the legs with to difference those out to make it a nice clean transition. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so hopefully that helps and gives you enough information to figure out how to do this sort of thing on your own. You can ask me any questions on Troy's Inkscape page or here on YouTube. Thanks.